viewers. I might do a video discussing that, but I'm not going to bog people down with the reasons for me not making videos recently in this video, because today we're here to talk about Big Finish, the Fugitive Doctor, Most Wanted. I'm not sure if it's the Fugitive Doctor or the Fugitive Doctor Adventures. On the Big Finish website, it's just listed as the Fugitive Doctor, as the series that it's a part of, in the same way that the War Doctor range is just the War Doctor, but the other Doctors are, for example, the 5th, 6th, 7th Doctor Adventures. So on the website it's just the Fugitive Doctor, but in the credits Joe Martin says the Fugitive Doctor Adventures, so take your pick. But yeah, this is the first set. We've got another one coming later on this year, I believe. I think only 2 confirmed so far. This was announced, I believe, close to 3 years ago now, along with, of course, the Big Finish debut of Sacha Dhawan and his master. It might not be his team, he might have done a Big Finish years ago, but it's certainly his master coming to Big Finish for the first time. Of course, the first set of that is coming, I believe, next month. I've got that on pre-order, as I had with this set, so I will be talking about that as well. Of course, we also saw Joe Martin, heard her in Coda, the final act, the kind of last little bit of the Once and Future series, which was released last November, I believe, October, November. I was not in on Once and Future, so I did not listen to that, and so this is the first stuff with Joe Martin I've listened to, and I was intrigued. I never felt like the Fugitive Doctor. She's not my favourite Doctor. I thought that she was interesting, but I never really I know for some people really connected with her, and I do think a lot of that is because she was the first black actor to portray the Doctor, and of course now we've got Ncuti as a main numbered Doctor, but technically Joe Martin got in there first. Of course she's another woman as well, and not to say that she only connected with people for those superficial reasons, but I always liked the Fugitive Doctor, and I like the fact that we don't know where she comes in the Doctor's timeline, and I don't think we ever should. I don't think we ever will. I was going to say I don't think we ever will, but maybe someone will, but I don't think we ever should officially, in as close to you get in terms of a canon with Doctor Who, which is not much, and shouldn't ever be. It shouldn't be a slave to canon. But of those 2 sort of series that were announced a couple of years ago, the Fugitive Doctor and the Spy Master, I was much more excited for the Spy Master. I think I still am. And of course we've got Jodie Whittaker and Mandip Gill coming to Big Finish later on in the year, in July, which I'm still very excited about that. I believe the first story is going to be called Vampire Weekend. Anyway, this set, of course, Most Wanted, comprises 3 stories. What I will say, my sort of initial impressions before listening to the set, when the cover was announced and we saw the brief synopses for the stories, was that I was a little disappointed to see the Daleks, just because I don't think that is, I just don't think that's an interesting thing to do didn't think they'd be in it lots, and they're not. Yeah, I mean, you can't glean much from episode synopses anyway. I think especially not with audio synopses, because you know there's only so much they can give away, and a lot of the audio medium I think really requires you as an audience member to put in the work. You know, you have to visualize this stuff yourself. You have to pay attention to what is happening, you know, in the dialogue and in the, you know, the sound effects and such, because there's no visual guide. But yeah, I was a little bit unsure about the Daleks being in it, but you know, let's say maybe it'll be a fantastic use of them. So this series is produced by David Richardson. The script editor is Robert Valentine, who I think is a bit of a Big Finish mainstay. I don't believe I've listened to any of his previous work, but all three writers in this set are people who have written a number of Big Finish stuff before. The first story is Fast Times by Robert Valentine. And I listened to these stories all in one day, which I've never done that before. This video is probably going to go up on Thursday, the 30th, of January. These were released yesterday, Wednesday the 29th, and I had a free day, so I listened to them all with gaps in between. I didn't marathon them all in one go, but I did listen to them all in the one day. But we start with Fast Times. The Doctor has left Division, maybe been kicked out. I'm not sure if it's kind of open to interpretation or if that's clarified. I can't recall specifically, to be honest. If I have a look, no, she's not part of the Division anymore. What we do know is that they've taken away memories, so it seems that they've already mind-wiped some of her life. We know they're going to wipe it again, if indeed she is a pre-Hartnell Doctor or a Season 6B Doctor, wherever she does end up fitting. Again, if we ever find out, which I don't think we should. But she's no longer part of Division, but is being wanted by them and pursued by them. She is captured by bounty hunters and is on a kind of a prison ship to be collected by people who have put the bounty on her head, which is obviously Gallifrey and the Division. She meets a young woman called Cade, I believe. Fade, sorry. And this is very much a introductory story for the kind of status quo of the Fugitive Doctor in this series, and in the interviews, because all of these stories, of course, have interviews at the end of them. I feel like that is the case with the majority of recent Big Finish releases. I haven't listened to lots and lots of recent Big Finish stuff, to be honest, but the 11th Doctor Chronicles all had interviews at the end of each episode, you know, about that specific episode. And in the interviews about this story, Robert Valentine talks about it being very much a status quo and setting up the playing field, basically. It is putting the pieces on the board to then be able to move them around and play the game. And I thought it was okay. This is the story that features the Daleks. They're not in it lots. Um, but I was a little bit, I don't want to say underwhelmed, but I think maybe my expectations of what a Fugitive Doctor story is going to be were a little bit different. I listened to the first War Doctor box set fairly recently. I didn't do a video about it. The original Running with John Hurt were on a sale. Those 4 box sets were in a bundle, and I got them a couple of months ago. And I listened to that first set, Only the Monstrous, and those are very different kind of stories to a traditional Doctor Who story, because the War Doctor is not a traditional Doctor, and I felt like the Fugitive Doctor stories would kind of be in a similar vein, where the Fugitive Doctor is not a traditional Doctor. She's not the Doctor that we know, and so a Fugitive Doctor story doesn't have to look like a normal Doctor Who story. But I would say that all 3 of these stories, with a few tweaks, are very bog standard Doctor Who stories. And not necessarily bad, but I think if you are unsure about this set, and you like Joe Mine as the Fugitive Doctor, or maybe you weren't necessarily sold by her limited appearances on TV, but you were intrigued by hearing more about her, but you were thinking, is it going to be very different to kind of traditional Doctor Who? I would say that it isn't, and if your expectations are that it would be very different, I would say adjust them accordingly. Now that might be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you want out of this. I think I wanted something a little bit less traditional, and that is, I would say, not what these stories are. As I say, I was not massively jazzed by the idea of the Daleks showing up, and when they did, they act like Daleks. The Doctor defeats them in an interesting, in a way the Doctor does. There is the interesting dynamic of they know who she is, but she doesn't know who they are, and the kind of companion surrogate role kind of becomes the Doctor role in terms of the Doctor saying, what are they? What are the Daleks? Are they robots? And the companion role is explaining what the Daleks are, because they have history with the Daleks. And the Daleks are like, you're the Doctor, you're the enemy. There's a funny moment where the Doctor is being like, okay, how do I know you? How do we know each other? Because I don't know you. And they're like, well, obviously you're the Doctor and you're the enemy. And she's like, oh, yeah, but like, just tell me, because I don't know. And the Dalek starts to tell her, but does it in a really slow and like he doesn't believe that she doesn't know who the Daleks are. So he kind of plays for time until he gets cut off, which I think is quite funny. They talked in the Nick Briggs talked in the interviews and the behind the scenes about the script specifying that there were Daleks from the Chase, that kind of era, and so he talked about how he adjusted his ring modulation accordingly, and the kind of way he performed it vocally. I can't say I massively noticed, but I'm not a Dalek expert in the way that Nick Briggs is, but I do think that bit of humour in the way the Dalek intonates and the way the Dalek is, it kind of pauses and talks like it's a human conversation. I think that is in the spirit of the Chase and that portrayal of the Daleks. This also introduces the kind of recurring antagonist character of Cosmogon, who's not necessarily a villain, but is the person trying to capture the Doctor, but isn't a member of Division. there isn't a lot of division in this set. Again, if that was something that you were anticipating or expecting or really looking forward to, if you really wanted, lots of division stories and stories about the Doctor working with and for the division, you're not gonna get that here. This is after that period of time. I think a lot of that is to do with partially because they didn't want to specify too much about that period of time where the Doctor fits what the division is. I think they also didn't want to sort of contradict stuff that was going on in the current second Doctor run, which is, as I understand it, very much season 6B. It's post-war games. The Doctor working for the Time Lords. They talk about having had a long chat with Chris Chibnall about the Fugitive Doctor and kind of, asked him, where does she fit? And he was like, well, I think this. And they kind of realised that Chris Chibnall has his own ideas and theories about where she fits, but he doesn't know. I really like that. I think some people will probably feel like, well, you created her, so you should know, but I think it's very interesting that he has kind of deliberately gone, I don't know, you can kind of go wherever you want. But the Doctor is not with the division in this set, and I would assume for the entirety of this run, she won't be with the division. So, if that was something you were really looking forward to, again, adjust your expectations. But Fast Times was okay. I think you get a sense of the Fugitive Doctor's character. She is, she's different, but she is still the Doctor, and maybe sometimes I felt that they really could have pushed at being very different. And I think that's possibly also true of the War Doctor. The little bits of stuff I've heard with him is that he kind of always feels like the Doctor, even though he's the Doctor who wasn't the Doctor. And in that instance, okay, he is kind of, rejected the name Doctor, and he's rejected that mantle, and he's become part of the war, but he's still fundamentally the Doctor. Especially if you believe the idea proposed in the novelisation of Day of the Doctor, that the potion he drinks in the Night of the Doctor is not a potion at all, and it's just like lemonade and dry ice. And he just kind of makes that choice to become a warrior himself. But the Fugitive Doctor isn't that. I believe that she is pre-Arnold, and I think, when the Fugitive Doctor was first introduced, and the idea of pre-Arnold Doctors was really made a genuine kind of possibility, and something that we had to really consider as a fandom, if you will. A lot of people talked about, and a lot of people for stupid reasons, who didn't like Joe Martin's casting for ideological reasons, that it kind of disrespects William Hartnell as the first Doctor, and it doesn't in the real world, because he's always the first and he always will be, and what happens in the fictional continuity of the show is only the fictional continuity of the show, and it doesn't undermine the first Doctor being the first Doctor, because it's just a TV show, it's just a narrative, and he still starts from a blank slate and becomes the character that we know. I think that having the Fugitive Doctor, who is most likely pre-Arnold, still kind of be the Doctor, more or less, I think that does undermine a little bit the first Doctor's narrative arc, which you could kind of retcon and say he kind of always had those qualities about him, doesn't. In those early stories, and a lot of people have talked about this, the first Doctor's character arc and his growth, you know, in the first story, he is going to bash a caveman's skull in. He deliberately misleads and lies to and puts these strangers that he's kidnapped in danger in the Daleks just so he can go and have a nosy around the city. He accuses and threatens Ian and Barbara in The Edge of Destruction, you know, the moment things seem odd and out of his control. And he learns the qualities of the Doctor that we know now through his companions. But I guess he doesn't, because the Fugitive Doctor, for as much as she's like, it's not my problem and it's not my concern, and she doesn't want to, you know, she's like, oh, don't come with me and I don't like people, she's still compassionate, she still helps people out, she still makes friends with people, even though she's a bit bossy and a bit rude, and a bit brash. I feel like they could have pushed that aspect more, but then, would she be too unlikable as a protagonist? I don't know. But yeah, Fast Times is a fine story, but it's very much setting up the status quo. Moving on to The Legend of Baba Yaga by Rochana Patel, who wrote a story in the 11th Doctor Chronicles, I believe. I can't recall which story she wrote, but was it the end in Geronimo? It was, and that was a good story. The Legend of Baba Yaga. I was a little disappointed that this is a setting in a piece of Earth history. One thing I didn't like this story is that the Fugitive Doctor knew about where on planet Earth she was and what time period and what was acceptable in that time period. She knew about all the legends of Baba Yaga. But the Doctor, the first Doctor, again, when he starts his journey, kind of lands on Earth just by chance, kind of adopts the clothing of the period, and it's just like, yeah, okay. For me, I feel like the Doctor should learn about the Earth the more that he travels there, or she. And in my mind and my interpretation of the Fugitive Doctor, and this is maybe where leaving incarnations so up to interpretation could kind of cause, not problems, but it might be a struggle for people producing stories about her, because I don't think that she does know that much about Earth. She hasn't, this is pre-Fugitive of the Jadoon, I believe, so she hasn't stopped on Earth and chameleon arched herself. So yeah, it's a small nitpick, but just a clash of my own kind of what I would want from the Fugitive Doctor, if that makes sense at all. But this was a good story. You get a good companion surrogate character in this, who is called what's her name? She's Russian. Vasilisa, who is a character from one of the legends of Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga herself is played with a lot of gumption and a lot of gusto by Jacqueline King, who you may know as Sylvia Noble from the TV show. And this was fun. You know, there's a mystery about what Baba Yaga is and how she exists and how she works, and is it magic, and the Doctor firmly does not believe in magic, but there's also this thing of the Doctor's there for a reason. She's come to see Baba Yaga for a reason, Vasilisa character. They've both gone to see the Baba Yaga to get something from her. The point I was saying earlier about this doctor, I think, could be a bit rude and a bit more brash and a bit blunter. There's a great moment in this where the doctor and Vasilisa are basically tasked to do kind of menial chores. I don't want to get too much into spoilers because obviously this is a very new box set, and the doctor kind of is like, well, you do it and I'll go and explore and figure out what's going on. And Vasilisa says, well, hang on, we were both taught to do the job. And the doctor says, that's alright, I'll share the credit. And I think that's the kind of, it's a bit rude and a bit kind of self-centered. And it's not the kind of response that you would expect from the doctor. But I like that because I think why not have a characterization that is really, really different. I thought this was good. I have a feeling that this is going to be most people's favourite story in this set. I don't know that there's going to be a big standout story from this set for loads of people, but I think this will probably be most people's favourite. It's got a good kind of fun mystery, and I did kind of guess a little bit what kind of part of the reveal at the end was. I kind of called that. And it is all kind of, there's a lot of mumbo jumbo and jargon that Jermaine has to really get through. But I thought that this was good. I thought that it was fun. I liked there are a couple of other side characters, but your major characters are the Baba Yaga and Vasilisa, and they're both very enjoyable. As I say, Jacqueline King is really going for it in a performance. She's really going for kind of a cackling, witchy character. She feels like she's jumped right out of a Disney film, but also she's not cackling. She's not really like dastardly evil. Like, she's kind of nice at some point. She's kind of almost polite at points. So I think that's a really interesting character. But yeah, this was fun. I think probably my favourite of the set. Quite loud cough, I apologise. But also kind of establishes something. Well, technically, episode 1 establishes it, but it's kind of reaffirmed here. And at this point was the point where I was like, oh, okay, I see what the kind of setup for how we're going to keep having standalone adventures is going to be. Where, as I said, the Doctor, has come to the Baba Yaga for something. And there's this thing of she doesn't know why she's been hunted by a division, and she doesn't have memories. And so that is kind of the hook for the series, is the Doctor is trying to find her memories. She's trying to work out why she's being hunted. Why Division want to arrest her? What did she do? That kind of really comes to a head in the third story. The Dimension of Lost Things is written by Lisa McMullen, where I think this was an interesting idea. There was a great visualization at the start where the Doctor messes around in the vortex and ends up in this dimension of lost things. She meets a mountaineer whose name is Sandy Irvine, who's played by Matt Wycliffe. Sandy Irvine is a real man who climbed Mount Everest in the 1920s, I believe, with another man. They went to reached the peak. The body of the other man was found in the 1990s, late 1990s, I believe. But Sandy Irvine, his body was never found. And he ends up in this dimension of lost things and a couple other characters. This is also the story where there are two doctors, two versions of the Fugitive Doctor, which is why there's two of her on the front cover, on the cover of the box art, I suppose you would say. I don't think having two of the same actor playing the same character is a good idea in audio unless there's a real distinction between the two. For example, the main range story, The Church and the Crown, which has Nicola Bryant voicing both Perry and I believe the Queen, who is English. And so obviously as Perry, she does her American accent, but as the Queen or the Princess, I don't recall exactly what she is, but she is using her native English accent, and so you can tell the difference between which is which. I was going to say orally, that's not what I mean. Sonically, I suppose you can hear the difference. But there's moments in this story where the Doctor is talking to herself. It's Jo Martin as the same character, giving the same kind of level of performance, and that's not me ragging on her. That's the nature of the story, and it gets a little bit confusing as to who is who, and one of them kind of knows a bit more than the other one, and there's this whole thing of one of them kind of has these memories and these dreams and the other one doesn't, and it's all this, but I kind of got a bit lost as to which one was which, like who's who. I can't always tell. There's a kind of a, not gruesome, there's a bit of a sad death in this, although it's a character that you don't really know all that well, you don't spend loads of time with, so it's kind of sad, but I think they cheat it in the way that it's portrayed. They use a trick where they can kind of make a death seem really upsetting without having to put the legwork in to really endear you to the character beforehand. Which, as I was listening to, I was like, oh, that's sad, but I don't know anything about that character, so is it that sad really? No. There's a reveal in this, there's a twist reveal about the nature of why there are two Doctors. I won't spoil that here. And that was quite interesting because you kind of assume one thing and then the reveal comes and you go, oh, that's really interesting. But then it's kind of not really explored as much as I would have liked. I kind of got a bit lost as to how we get back to just the one Doctor, like where the other one goes, or is it how they leave the story? And maybe that's probably on me for not paying enough attention, although I felt that I was, but but that was a really interesting thing, and kind of then, it very much sets the end of this story. Really, kind of, you get a sense of the Doctor is now kind of firmly like, I need to know what memories have been taken and what I did and why these people want to get me. And that was good. That there's a real driving momentum, it feels, for the following set and the future of the range. But that is kind of the takeaway I have from these three stories. There's a bit as well. There's a kind of ongoing thing in these sort of dream sequences where the Doctor kind of repeats a phrase, and I just felt that it was repeated too many times in succession, and I was like, this is not effective for me anymore. But I think that's probably a nitpick. But yeah, that's kind of the sense I got of. I will check out the next set. I think that it's interesting to get more of the Fugitive Doctor, and I will be able to go into the next set with more of a understanding of what these stories are going to be, and I think I'll enjoy the next set more because of that, because my expectations will be more, I was going to say more reasonable, just more kind of realistic, I suppose, as to what we're going to get. As I say, there's a great onward momentum from the end of this set, where I feel like we're going to go, and that's good. But I would say that this was okay. It didn't wow me. It didn't blow me away. It's not as good as I say, I preferred the first War Doctor set with John Hurt, because it really was quite a different type of story. This isn't as good as the 11th Doctor Chronicles, to compare it to recent Big Finish stuff I've listened to. But it was fun. And Joe Martin is good sometimes, and I don't know if this is her, or if this is the writing or the direction. The director of all three of these stories is Bethany Weems. She'll have said it in the interviews as well, and I've forgotten the way she pronounced it. But I did feel at points that Joe Martin could be a bit, I think wooden is harsh, but maybe kind of blunt, and maybe a bit flat. I don't think she quite got, certainly the scenes where the Doctor is maybe talking to herself, or kind of shouting, or it's like an action sequence. That's hard to pull off on audio where you're just stood in front of a mic, of course. I don't know that Joe Martin pulls those off as well as maybe some other actors that I've heard, in those sorts of scenarios. But of course, she's by no means bad, and she really shines in the areas where this Doctor is different to the others. I think that she is a great cast for a Doctor who's not like any other Doctors we know. And I think that the best bits of this set and these stories are when they lean in. Sorry, I get my sentence right. When they lean in to this Doctor being very different and unique. Because to me, that's what was interesting about her. So those are kind of my thoughts. The only other point I would say that I was a bit disappointed by is the use of the 2018 theme. They used Sagan Akinola's arrangement of the theme that was used throughout Jodie's run. I really felt that we were going to get a unique theme for the Fugitive Doctor. Again, not to keep going back to the War Doctor, but he got his own version of the theme. I really felt that we were going to get that for the Fugitive Doctor. I thought that would be a great opportunity to do a really different version of the theme, again, because this Doctor's not like the others. But it's just the 2018 theme, which is a beautiful version of the themes, one of my favourites. But it's the 13th Doctor's theme, it's not the Fugitive Doctor's theme. I felt that was a missed opportunity, personally. But this has gone on. I've talked a lot longer than I expected. So I very much thank you for sticking around and listening, if indeed you have. Let me know if you listened to these stories. Were you maybe on the fence? Have I convinced you, or maybe convinced you not to listen to this? I don't mean to kind of direct people in either way necessarily, but I'd be interested to hear what people think about this set. it was kind of affected by my expectations going in, and that is the main thing I would want to communicate to people if they're not unsure is don't expect something that it isn't, if that makes sense. But I'll wrap it up there. Yes, so thank you very much for watching. Thank you for listening and sticking with me, if indeed you have. I'm going to try and do a few more videos a bit more regularly. Obviously we've got some stuff coming up later on in the next few weeks and months. I think I'm going to do a quick video in the next few days about these new writers who were announced a couple of days ago. I didn't consider to do that, but I think I will. But yeah, I will see you all in the next video, whatever that may be. Yes, thank you for watching, thank you for your time, thank you for listening. Please do like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you all in the next video.